Welcome to a realm where personal growth meets expansive spirituality and where we're not just scratching the surface. We're diving deep, widening our perspectives, and having a darn good time doing it. This is the Enliven Podcast, and I am your host, Jen Hamilton. You'll enjoy an infusion of motivation, empowerment, and inspiration that will resonate in every aspect of your life. Expect captivating stories, heartfelt musings, and my own personal experiences. But that's not all. I'm bringing awe-inspiring individuals to the table, so get ready to meet some remarkable souls whose wisdom and stories will leave you spellbound. No topic is off limits here. Brace yourself for raw authenticity, unfiltered vulnerability, and yes, the occasional splash of explicit language. We're delving into the realms of the esoteric, mystical, and the woo-woo, unafraid to explore the extraordinary. So if you are ready to venture beyond the surface, to explore the depths of your soul, and to awaken the magic of life, if your heart says yes, then hit that play button and let the Enliven Podcast guide you on this remarkable expedition. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Enliven Podcast. I am your host, Jen, and my very special guest today is John Butler. John is a professional portrait photographer hailing from the picturesque Ottawa Valley in Canada. Although he originally hails from the Toronto area, he ventured westward to Edmonton for a transformative 3 years in his late 20s and 30s. With a loving wife and 2 cherished daughters by his side, John has navigated his own journey of self-improvement and resilience, having survived a major car accident in his late 20s and later supporting his wife throughout her remarkable recovery from a major stroke in 2007. In 2020, driven by the growing awareness of mental health challenges during the pandemic, John turned to his microphone and launched the inspiring podcast Butler's Babble. Here, he engages with ordinary people who have overcome past traumas and hardships, sharing their stories of resilience to offer hope and support to others. The premise of his podcast is to empower, motivate, and inspire, and this is John in a nutshell. I know you're going to absolutely love this episode that we've got ahead for you today, so without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, John, to the Enliven Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
John, tell us all about you. You're a podcaster, photographer, TV host. Tell us all about the magic that you bring to the world.
Well, I'm married with 2 beautiful daughters, and I live in a town about 5 hours north of Toronto, Canada, in a little town called Petawawa, Ontario. It's basically one of the main military bases in Canada, and so there's not a lot to do around here, of course. And my first passion, of course, is photography. I've been a photographer for over 30 years now. I started around 1992 in my business as a photographer. But over the last, I would say, 3 years, I guess, I've gotten more being in front of the camera like you see right now. So we have a local TV station here, just the normal cable TV, and I host a television show in there called John and Dave TV. And then we have my podcast that I started back in 2020. So getting used to being in front of the camera instead of behind the camera all the time.
It helps to be an extrovert, doesn't it?
It is. I'm a total extrovert. So
yeah. I see you there. I see you there. Now, you've been through some pretty major stuff in your life.
Yes.
Let's dive into that. Tell us about your experience with an incredible trauma that you had early on.
Well, I guess the first one we can do is actually even before I even met my wife. It's when I was still living in the Toronto, Canada area, just outside in a little city called Brampton, Ontario. And I was a fitness and bodybuilding photographer back then. I used to do photography for a magazine like Muscle Mag International and Oxygen Women's Fitness Magazine because I worked at their head office as a normal 9-to-5 job and did the photography on the side. So I was actually... I booked a trip to Chicago with a friend of mine, which was about an 8-hour drive from here, I guess, or from Toronto. And I had a fitness model friend of mine. Her and her husband invited me to come down to do some photographs with them for a weekend. And so we got in the car, we drove down there, and we had a great weekend, and we photographed the model. We had fun time. We had dinner, everything like that. And I remember it was, I believe, the Monday night. we were coming home, and I think Chicago was about an hour and a half behind us time wise. So we were getting ready to go, and my friend is a good friends with a couple of the WWF at that time, the WWE now wrestlers, and it turned out they were doing a Monday Night Raw episode in Chicago that weekend. So he actually texted up his buddy and said, "Hey, you guys are in Chicago?" He's like, "Yeah," and it's like, "Well, we're here too doing a shoot." And he goes, "Okay, how many tickets do you want?" So they ended up giving us myself, my buddy, and for my model and her husband, we all went to the Monday Night Raw wrestling. And this was around 1999, 2000 in that area. And so we went to that. And of course, they're done at night. So it's like 8 o'clock at night. So by the time they're done, it's like 10:30, 11. We went back to the hotel and met with the one guy in the lobby there. And we hung out with him for about half an hour to an hour. Finally got to the point we had to drive home. And my model and her husband's like, "Why don't you guys just come and stay at our house for the night and get an early start?" And I'm like, "Nope, I got to get to work in the morning. I got to get back to Muscle Mag. So I appreciate it, but we're going to try and make it done." And she told me, she goes, "You better be careful, because if I hear you have any issues, I'm going to be upset." I said, "Okay, no problem." So we left and we got on the drive and everything was all fine. And this would have been probably around 1 o'clock in the morning, I guess. And so here we are. We've crossed back into Canada around 7:30. By about 8 o'clock in the morning, we're maybe, I would say, about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from home. And I was just tired, I guess. I don't know. I don't have an excuse for it, but I'm just driving, and I decided I was going to make a lane change. And as I went to do that lane change, being so tired and not thinking properly, I didn't look in my mirror. I didn't look in these mirrors, and I didn't look in my blind spot. I just decided to put my signal on and go. So I put my signal on. I went over, and not beknownst to me, there was a nice 18-wheeler truck right beside me, a little bit behind, so I didn't see him right away. And I ended up going right into his front tire there, the side of my car. We hit so hard that he flung me right in front of him, where he actually T-boned me and flung me right off the highway. And you got to remember, this is a highway, so we're going about 100 kilometers an hour, 120 kilometers an hour. And he flung me right through the guardrail. And then the rest of it was basically going by what witnesses had told the police officer, because it just goes blank for a while. I don't remember a lot of it, but apparently when we went through that guardrail, the car went up in the air, flipped a couple times, landed, rolled a couple times, went back in the air, came down, rolled, and we ended up about 100 yards or 150 yards away from the highway and landed on the driver's side. Luckily to me, somebody upstairs was watching over us that day, because not only did I have no injuries myself, my buddy who was with me, who was sleeping in the car at the time when it happened, he came out with he did hit his head a little bit on the windshield, but he said it was fine. It was just a little minor one. And he cut his hand right here from when he punched the glass to get out. Other than that, we came out with no injuries, just shocked and scared. And yeah, it was not the easiest thing to go through. So, but we came out unscathed with not any issues to us at all, thank God. And the truck driver, he was just more shooken up, but not even a scratch on his truck at all. So my dad's car was totaled, because it was my dad's car I was driving, but we came out okay. So luckily, and all I got was the police officer interviewed everybody, and then he brought me in. He said, "Just calm down, everything's fine. From what they said, you weren't radically driving or doing anything wrong. You just made a bad decision. So I'm just going to give you an illegal lane change." And it came at that time, I think it was like an $80 fine or something like that, and then a couple demerit points, and that was it on my record. So that was the first major trauma that happened to me. That basically centered me onto a different path with my career. So.
Wow, holy fuck. The fact that you guys walked away from that with, barely a scratch or injury, like that's phenomenal in itself. Like, do you have any recollection of being hit or flipping, or were you out of it by then and you've got no memory of that?
I don't really remember a lot of that. I don't even remember a lot of the drive home, to tell you the truth. We were just so tired. It was so long ago. You're looking at about now, probably about 23 years ago. So a lot of it's not in my brain anymore. But I do have pictures still of my dad's car. It was a little red Ford Escort. So it wasn't a very big car either. And I still have, when they towed it to a place in that area, the next day, my dad and I got in another car, of course, that we had, and we drove down to the wrecking yard that the car was taken to see if there's any possessions we had to get out of it and stuff. And I took pictures of it. I wish I had them here, but I don't. I'd have to find them. But yeah, I have a little 4x6 prints of what the car looked like afterwards. And everybody who looks at them, they're like, I don't know how you came out of that with not like how you survived it. Everybody's telling me like they're surprised we even survived the accident, no matter no scratches or nothing. So, and my mom was worried because she was afraid I wouldn't want to get behind a car and drive again. She that trauma, but no, I was fine. I was able to drive again. The way I don't know, I just picked up and just kept going. So now, if you ask my wife or anybody, they say I drive like a grandma, but that's just because I'm old now. So.
And did you have a near-death experience at all that you can?
No, actually, I've been asked that a couple times. Yeah, that's true. Okay. I've been asked that, and no, I don't remember having a near-death experience. Like I said, I didn't even have a scratch. I think I was just more in shock because the car was sideways on the driver's side, and I'm laying there sideways, maybe still holding on with two hands to the steering wheel, not knowing what happened. Like I'm just in shock. And so the only recollections I do have from that, now that you say it, is basically my buddy. We were both strapped in, and luckily we were wearing our seatbelts. So if there's anybody out there says seatbelts don't save your life, I'm proof that it does. He was all like, didn't know what was going on. He's calling my name and I'm not answering. So he thought I was dead or something. He thought something happened to me or seriously injured. So he freaked out. And that's when he put his hand up and he smashed the glass on his, which of course is at the top of the car right now. And he busted the glass open and all this glass started coming down on my side of my face there. And then that's when I finally started to speak. And I'm like, Steve, like, just hold on there. I'm getting glass all over me and that. And he's like, okay, are you okay? I'm like, fine. So he unstrapped himself and stood on my door in between me there and pulled himself out of the car. And then I remembered there was a little gap on my door, from my door to the ground. There was a little gap from it being all mangled in that. And it had a little bit of a gap there that I was able to crawl under, almost like a dog that dug a hole under a fence and was going under the fence. I was able to crawl out and get out of the car that way. And then from there, it's just a matter of sitting on the side of the road and everything going on. But from the part where I went into him and he hit me to that spot when I'm telling Steve not to move around anymore, I don't remember anything in between it. So it was just all blank. And maybe one day I will remember one day. I don't know, but not that I want to remember that part. I mean, that's us flying in the air and stuff and rolling. I don't want to remember any of that.
Yeah, there's a reason that your mind blocks it out.
But yeah, I don't recollect any of that. It's all the stuff after and before I remember. I don't even remember the drive that much because it was just a nothing drive, just driving home. So
yeah. Wow. And keep going. Then what happened? Tell us about some more of the life.
Well, it's funny because like I said, I was working as a normal 9-to-5 job doing warehouse work and basement work and mailroom stuff at Muscle Mag and Oxygen at the time. And I was doing these photo shoots on my own time. So I would go and do these shoots and then I would submit the photos to the boss, the owner of the magazine. Hey, do you want to buy these for the magazine? So I wasn't thinking much of it, but I remember about 6 months later, maybe a little less, I was driving home one day from work and stuff. And I don't know if you've ever heard the song by Garth Brooks called Standing Outside the Fire.
No.
And it's a song that came out in the 90s that he did. And the chorus of the song is, life is not tried, it is merely survived if you're standing outside the fire. And I was listening to this song and those words just started taking heart to me. And from that accident to hearing that song, I started reliving my life basically, because I would have been around, 82, 92, almost 30 years old. So my late 20s at this time. And I started recollecting what I've been doing. And I've basically just been living life very safe, just working a 9-to-5 job, a regular paycheck every 2 weeks, pay your bills, things like that. And I started thinking, you know what, that's me. I'm living my life standing outside that fire. And so I started thinking, if I want to make anything happen in my life, I'm actually going to have to start to get into that fire and start doing things for myself. So I got the courage, and about a week or two later, I walked into my boss's office, and he was one of those guys that he was a photographer himself. And so whenever I would do photography stuff, I didn't have a lot of equipment at that time. And he would lend me like his $3,000 lens and say, okay, here, go shoot this contest. Or we have these models come in to shoot, to model for these clothing line that we're doing here. I'm going to set it up. You shoot it, and then we'll just use it. I said, okay. So that was the type of person he was. He was helping me along, get my photography career going. So I walked into his office, thanked him for everything he had done for me up until that point, and I said, you know what? I think it's time that I try and make this on my own and try and go out and do this. So I gave my 2 weeks notice at the company that I'd worked for almost 10 years. It was like 9.5 years. And I told him I'd stick around to train anybody if he needed to, but I'm going to give my 2 weeks notice. And so I gave my 2 weeks notice. And after that, went out there and just tried my best to get my photography career on the go and do it full time. And I did that for a while. And it was one of the best things I ever did. So.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. Tell us, so, and then was it after that you got married?
Yes. So at that time, I was single at that time. I met another young lady and we were dating for a while. I ended up moving to Edmonton, Alberta, which is more on the west coast of Canada. And I lived there for 3 years. Her and I, when I moved there, we actually ended up breaking up about 8 months later. But I liked it there. I was working at a camera store and I was just building up my equipment that way too, because I was getting stuff for cheaper by working there and stuff. And I ended up meeting my wife through some mutual friends, through a thing online. It was similar to Facebook, but not exactly like Facebook. Because this is back in 2004, 2005 type of thing. And it was like a gaming type of thing, not gaming as in playing games, but it was more like, it was like a social thing like Facebook, like a social media thing, but you got points for everything you did on there. So if you had somebody else join, you got points. If you like the person's picture or comment on it, you got points. And the more points you got, you could trade it in for prizes and things like that. So I had a friend of mine make me join there because she wanted to get all these points. So I joined on there, and you'd go through it every now and then. And my wife and I ended up meeting on there and started talking back and forth. It turned out she lived here in Ontario and my family was back here in Ontario still. So I would fly home to visit my family. And while I was here, I would rent a car and drive the 5 hours north to where my wife now was, and I would visit with her. And then I would, after that weekend, go back to the Toronto area, drop the car off, and the next morning get on a plane and fly back to Edmonton. And we did this for, I want to say probably about 6 months.
Wow.
We would do this every now and then. And it finally got to the point one of us had to make the move, and it was easier for me to do it. So I ended up moving back to Ontario, moved here. That was around 2005. And or 2006, sorry, mid 2006. And around 2009, we ended up getting married. We have 2 beautiful daughters. We went backwards. We had the daughters first, and then we got married. And here I am, 2023. We're still married to this day, and our daughters are now, one's graduated high school, the other one's grade 11 now. And so yeah, that all happened after the fact. But those could be a big story in its own right. But
yeah, because your wife had an unwell moment.
Yep.
If you want to share a bit about that, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It was 2000, early 2000s. Like my oldest daughter was born in 2001. And when it was around 2003, my wife ended up having a minor stroke. And when I say minor, it's because she didn't even know she was having it. It wasn't until I guess a day or so later, when she went to the hospital to get herself checked out, that she found out that, oh yeah, you suffered a minor stroke. But while they checked her out to find out what caused it, they also found that she had a hole in her heart. And in her heart, she also has an aneurysm. But they say as long as the aneurysm stays in your heart, you're fine. There's nothing going to happen. And it should stay there the rest of her life. There's no reason why it should come out. But they found it because apparently, I guess when you're born with a hole in your heart. And when you take that first gasp of breath, it closes up, from what I understand. I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on that. But hers never, I guess, closed up. And apparently that's common to some people. It just didn't close up.
Yeah, my brother had that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they think that's when they found that. But the actual stroke, they think, was because of a cause of birth control pills. And that's what caused the first stroke. And that is a warning sign on birth control pills, as it can cause strokes in that. So she did have that minor stroke. And they had her on blood thinners and things like that. They ended up closing up that hole in her heart with what's called a PFO closure, which basically looks like a reversible umbrella, basically. And they go in, they stick it in that area. And over time, the wall of the skin from the heart sort of seals over top of it and closes up that hole. And hers, they said, was like 99.9% sealed. As long as it stays like that, you'll be fine. Well, in 2007, we were pregnant with our youngest daughter, and during her pregnancy, she ended up getting an enlarged heart. And by her heart enlarging, it opened up that hole a little bit. And what we didn't know was at the time she had a blood clot in her heart that decided to come out that hole. If it would have stayed in her heart, eventually it would have just went away or whatever. But because when she was pregnant, because she was on these blood thinners, they had to take them off at a certain time beforehand because they don't want her to bleed out when she gives birth. And then it's like a crapshoot. You got to try and figure out when to put them back on the blood thinners afterwards. So I guess she just didn't get on them fast enough, and it was nobody's fault. It's like I said, a crapshoot. You're just guessing. And the clot that was in her heart ended up coming out of that hole and going right to her brain and caused a major stroke. And this was about 2 or 3 days before Christmas. I think it was like December 22nd, December 23rd in that area. And she comes down the stairs, says, something's not right. I got to go to the hospital. So we took her to the hospital and found out she was still actually going through the stroke at the time. But she was past the window where apparently there's this thing that they can give her to try and stop the stroke. But apparently it was past the window that they can offer that. And so they put her up in a room upstairs. This was around 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night or something like that. And they let me stay for the night on a little cot in the room with her. And I get woken up probably about 1, 2 in the morning with my wife screaming my name. And when I wake up, she was trying to get up to go to the bathroom. And when she woke up to do that and she went to move, she couldn't move her left side. She was just totally almost paralyzed. She couldn't move. So I called the doctor or the nurses at the time. They came in and they said, yeah, she's still going through the stroke apparently. And so by 8 o'clock that morning, I believe it was somewhere in that area, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, they were finally able to get her an ambulance in time to drive her to the Ottawa hospital here, University Hospital, which is about an hour and a half drive from here, maybe 2. And I drove up in the car behind them. And by the time we got to that hospital, she started slurring her words and her face was drooping on the left side. She still couldn't move anything on her left side. She was basically paralyzed on her whole left side. And so this is in there. And she ended up being in the hospital, going back and forth from the Ottawa hospital and here in Pembroke area to the Pembroke hospital, back and forth about all through, like probably at least a couple times a month for 4 months straight. So she was in the hospital for up until April Fool's, basically April 1st. And she almost died on them about 4 times while in the hospital because she kept clotting and they don't know why. And so I'd get a call at work. I was working a 12-hour shift work at that time, just trying to get the photography business in this area going. I'd work this 12-hour shift work at a fiberboard plant here, and I'd get a phone call there saying, oh, your wife just passed out. She's back down in ICU. So I'd, of course, rush down there to find out what's going on. And so they didn't know what was going on. And finally, on April 1st, they said they were going to discharge her home. They didn't think there was really much more they could do for her. They've tried everything. And it almost sounded like they basically didn't think they were ever going to see her again. They basically thought she'd maybe going to pass on and that she'd be more comfortable doing it at home with family. And I mean, when the doctor comes into your hotel or your hospital room and says, do you mind if I say a prayer for you before you go? That's not a good sign usually. So, so yeah, she came home and we stayed at her parents' place at first because they had more of a one-level house with all the bedrooms and that on the main level, whereas our house is a 3-level duplex. And so you have the basement, you have the main floor, and then you have the bedrooms on a second floor, and going up and down those steps because she was starting to walk by this time, but still with a limp and things like that. She had gotten part of her left arm back, but it wasn't completely back. And her left side, she had what's called a drop foot, where it wants to drop all the time and curve in every time she wanted to walk. So she needed a little bit more time for rehab, and she came home. And it's funny because as we're living there, over the next couple of weeks to a month, she started getting better and better. It wasn't fun at first because to get her back on the proper blood thinners, they gave us these needles that we had to get all the time. There was 30 needles or something, and I'd have to give her a needle twice a day right in her stomach and put this blood there until the the pills that they gave her got into her system, because it took a couple weeks for it to get into her system. And until then, I'd have to do these. And luckily, I had benefits at the job I was at, or else I would have been bankrupt probably, because we looked it up later on, and I think it was about $3,000 or $4,000 a month just on medications.
Whoa.
And luckily, I was covered for 80 or 85% of it or something. So it was costing us like $30 a month or something like that. I can't remember. So we got through it, and then she got better and better. And here it is, 17 years later, and she helps me run my business. She does a lot of my editing for me. She's never gotten that whole left side completely back, but she walks on her own with a little bit of a limp. And like I said, her hand's probably like 85% maybe, but never fully back. But I mean, and she was left-handed, so she had to relearn to do everything with her right hand. So she's come a long way, but she's still here kicking with us. So
Wow, that's
I was stubborn.
incredible.
I told her she wasn't allowed to go anywhere anyways, because you're not leaving me with 2 kids.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What a journey you've been through. And so, especially like after the car accident, I mean that's a major life trauma in itself anyway. As your wife is going through this and as you're trying to hold space for your daughters, tell us about that experience, what that was like for you, raising your daughters, having to handle, and hold the fort for everything.
You got to remember, when she went into the hospital, we had a baby that was only 2 months old at the time, because she was born in October and this was December when it happened. So we had a 2-month-old baby and a 6-year-old daughter that I basically had to try and raise, get the 6-year-old to school every day. Luckily, her parents, they've passed on since then, but at the time they lived around the corner from us. So I had them to lean on to babysit the kids when I had to work or do other stuff and that, and shoots and stuff. So I did have help there, but it was still, I was going on 3 hours sleep a night for about 4 months, because I would be a 12-hour shift work, and I would be working like, say, 7 in the morning till 7 at night. So I'd have to get up in the morning, drop the girls off at the grandparents' house, so that they can take care of the baby during the day, plus get my other one to school and stuff. And then I would go visit my wife, get there about 6:30, visit her for about 10-15 minutes. And then my work was about 10 minutes away. So I'd drive to work, log in, work 12 hours there. And then when that was over, go back to the hospital, visit my wife for about a half an hour to an hour, drive back to the grandparents' place, pick up the kids, bring them home, feed them, get the one to bed. Hopefully the baby would go to bed soon, type of thing. And like I said, with a baby, you're not getting much sleep. And then start the whole next day, then the same thing. And then sometime after that, you'd swap. Now I'm doing 7 at night till 7 in the morning. So it's a whole different aspect there, because now I'd be with the girls all day long. One would be at school. I'd have to get up, get her to school, keep the baby, get her fed. Hopefully she can take a nap during the day so I can get some sleep. And then, or sometimes take her to the hospital to visit mom. And then I would get them over to pick up the other one from school, feed her dinner, get her to the grandparents' place, go visit my wife at the hospital, go to work, do the 12-hour shift, get off work, go to the grandparents, pick up the baby and my oldest, bring her home, get her some breakfast, get her to school. And it was just ongoing. So it wasn't easy. And even my mom would phone me and she would say, like, I'm seeing pictures of you that you're posting on there, and you look like you're getting a lot thinner. You're losing a lot of weight. You got to be eating. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, because you're no good to anybody else if you're not taking care of yourself. And so that was things that I was coping with. And then just the whole aspect, like, your wife's in the hospital. There's nothing you can do. You don't even know if she's going to survive this. And luckily, I had a friend of mine that I knew from high school, and she lived in Newfoundland originally, and she moved to Tennessee in the States there, my friend Jennifer, and she had a chiropractic degree, but she was also a little bit off from almost getting her full doctorate degree. So she knew a lot of the stuff, and I was able to lean on her. And sometimes early in the morning, it'd be like late, and she would be home, and I would call her, because she said, anytime you need anything, call me. So I would call her up and say, this is what's going on. And she said, well, what are the doctors saying? So I would explain it to her. She would explain it to me in layman's terms so I can understand what they're talking about. And then, and it was funny, because I'd go back to the hospital a day or two later, and the doctor would be talking to me, and he would say, here, this is what we're talking about. And it'd be exactly what she told me on the phone. So it was nice to have that person bounce off of, to know, like, what's going on. And, but it was still stressful. And I think mentally I was just hanging on the threads probably. And
Yeah.
but we got through it. It shows you how strong of a person really can be until, like, when a trauma like that happens. That really shows people how strong you really are, because you got to put a lot of shoes on and you've got to get through it somehow, because you got two little girls that are depending on you, on top of your
Yeah.
wife needs that support too, to know that that everything's being taken care of at home, and that everything's going on okay where she is too. So, and I tried to visit her as much as I could and bring the kids as much as I could, because
Mm.
that PTSD she's going through, because not only just the health issues that she's going through and wondering if she's going to survive, but she's got two beautiful daughters at home that she can't hang out with anytime she wants. And that bond that the mother and daughter get when they're first born, basically I was getting that bond with her because I'm the one that was basically raising her. So I think that's why for most of my 16-year-old daughter's life, she's more of a daddy's girl than she is a mummy's girl, probably because I had that bond with her at first. So
Mm. And so, John, following the car accident that you had, did you experience any PTSD from the car accident, or how did that change your outlook or your perception of life itself?
I don't think I really, it's funny. Like I said, with my mom, she was worried that I wouldn't want to drive again because of that whole trauma of me being behind the car when this happened. But PTSD wise, I don't think I really had that, because I just kind of shook it off. Maybe because I was still young. I don't know. But I do know it changed my trajectory and what I wanted to do with my life. Because, like I said, I was working at Muscle Mag as a normal 9 to 5er, and this was something else that I wanted to do, and I was always too afraid to do it. So it definitely made me take more chances in life, not just with my career, but in things I do in my life too. Because now I found in the last 30 years since that accident, I'm not afraid to take those chances. So if something comes up, whether it be in a relationship, whether it be to do with career change, or even starting my podcast, or just anything that I've done with my life these days, I wasn't afraid to take those chances. I'm one of those guys. I'm total extrovert, as you know, and I'm not afraid to get out there and just stick my head out there and see where it takes me. And I don't think I was a very shy person going through high school. Not the one that wanted to get up in front of the class and do a speech or a poem or whatever. Even just, I had my group of friends that I hung out with, and just going out there and meeting other ones. I was not the one to make the first move, if that makes sense. I was always not an introvert, but I wasn't an extrovert. I was kind of in between, because I wasn't afraid to go out and do stuff, but I was never usually the one to initialize it. And then after that accident, I find I'm the one that initializes almost everything. If I see something, I'm going to go do it. Or if I see something's coming up, I'm like, hey guys, you want to go do this, or do you want to go do that? It did change me personality wise, I think, because I'm not afraid to take those chances, because I started thinking, you know what, life is so short. It could have been gone just like that. So don't sit back, get right in there, get in that fire and go and do what you want to do. And because nobody's going to do it for you. So you got to do it yourself. So, and I think that accident is what caused me to be in that sort of a frame of mind, I guess.
Yes, it's so true, isn't it? Because some people go through, whether it's an accident or a trauma or a shock loss of a loved one, or, something that happens to them, it shakes them awake. It shakes them into realizing, hang on, we're only here for such a short period of time. There's so much that we can experience and accomplish and achieve through this human experience, and it can be taken away in a split second.
Mm-hmm.
Even regarding your wife, then having the mini stroke and then having the major stroke, you just don't know when your health is going to be compromised. And so it shakes you, and it shouldn't have to be that a major life event shakes you awake. It should be that we're grabbing life by the balls now and going, what have you got for me? Come at me. Like, tell us some of the things that you've done with your life that, had this accident never have happened to you, John, like, what are some of the things that you've gone, no, this is a non-negotiable. I'm just going to get out there and do the thing. You mentioned your podcast. There's other bits and pieces. What else has had sort of like a major impact on your life that you wouldn't have done without this experience?
I think it's even to do with just my photography career in general too, because before the accident, I would be working at Muscle Mag, and I would just do the odd, like there's a thing in the Ohio Ohio every year. That's the Arnold Classic, they call it, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic. It's a big body show. And
Mhm.
I would go there, but I would just be with some buddies. We go on the weekends, things like that. But since the accident, and I left Muscle Mag as a normal full timer and just started doing photography for them and other magazines, I branched out, like I said, to those other magazines. I actually started taking bigger trips too. So I booked trips to Colorado to do photo shoots with a model. I booked one to Florida to go stay with a couple friends of mine that were models, and we stayed at their place in Daytona Beach, Florida, and then did some shoots with them there. Just reaching out to these people, which I never would have had the balls basically to reach out to them and say, hey, do you want to do a photo shoot? I reached out to a couple models of friends of mine in Venice Beach, California, which is noticed as Muscle Beach. And I would say, hey, I want to come down and do some shoots for the week. Do you want to shoot with me? Sure. And I'd have some of them say, hey, do you got a hotel? No. Okay. You're staying at our place. And I'd go and stay with them and their husbands or their wives or whoever. And things that I never would have been willing to reach out and do if I didn't have that little trauma happen to me. And then you can also branch that off, like you said, with the podcast, something that was actually brought on because of the pandemic and
Mhm.
being stuck at home and trying to figure out what do I want to do. And I'd always thought about wanting to do a podcast. And so um, just going out and just saying, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I waited till I got some sort of logistics for it, but once I was ready to go, boom, I just jumped into it. Maybe if I didn't have that accident and had that change my mindset, maybe that wouldn't have happened. I don't even know if I would have been living in Edmonton because after that accident and I was willing to take chances, I met my ex through some friends and she was then living in Edmonton. So I got up and moved to Edmonton. And who says I would have done that before? I was probably going to be a lifer living in Ontario. So I think it just changed the way that I look at where I want to be with my life. And now the only things that sort of hold me back are things like maybe financial reasons. I mean, there might be things I want to do, but financially I can't really do them yet. Or I have a wife and two children I have to worry about too. And I can't just get up and just go and do stuff with and tell, oh, I'll be back in a week or so, or things like that. We have bills to pay and stuff too. So that's the only stuff that holds me back from doing certain things. But if I was still single, I'd probably be out there just doing whatever I want to do and not worrying about anything. And I was never like that growing up. I was always, even dating, I was never a big dater in high school. I was the type that I was the girl's best friend who's always sitting there complaining about what their boyfriends are doing, type of thing. So I was never the one that would go out and ask the girl out. They would have to ask me out. So any of the girls I dated in high school was more them coming to me instead of me going after them.
Mm.
But then after the accident, I had no problem going, if I saw a girl that I liked and going up to them saying, hey, do you want to go out and do this or do that? No problem. But I never would have did that before the accident. So it does change your mindset a lot.
It does. It does. And hopefully it doesn't take, our listeners a major trauma or an accident to shake them awake and realize that there is a whole life out there waiting for them. If someone's listening, John, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, I don't want to have this, this type of experience where I have to almost die to, wake up. But they're like, oh, I want to be an extrovert. I want to put myself out there. Or I want to take the leap. I want to take the next step forward. What's some advice or some wisdom that you would like to impart on them on how to just move forward?
I would say just do it because I found what helped me out is if it's say a person that's afraid to be talking in front of people or in front of a big group, or they just have that shyness. They're, like you said, they're an introvert. They want to be an extrovert. There's a couple ways that you can do it that would help you out. One thing is, I don't know if they have it there where you are, but here we have a thing called Toastmasters. Now, I've
Yes,
never
we have
been a member, but
Toastmasters here.
okay.
Yeah.
So I have a different group here, a business group I was part of called BNI, which is it's kind of similar, but Toastmasters is a fantastic avenue if you're the type of person that's shy to get up in front of people, to join your local Toastmasters, because you'll learn those techniques to be able to get up there and talk. And it starts with like small groups and that, but they'll teach you that and to get you to that point. Another thing that helped me out, just find something that you like to do. I grew up in Toronto, Canada, where of course here in Canada, hockey is a big thing, ice hockey. And so at an early age, not only did I play hockey because I have three brothers and my dad, we all were involved in hockey, but I refereed hockey and I coached hockey. And being a coach is a total different avenue because you're in charge of 15 to 18 children that their parents are relying on you to look after them for that hour, hour and a half that you have them, that they're not going to get hurt. They're going to learn and they're going to have fun. And every month we would have what we call is a team meeting with the parents, a parent meeting. So I would send my assistant coaches out on the ice, and my manager and I would go in the dressing room with anywhere from 20 to 30 parents, because you got some that are maybe just one parent there, one maybe both parents are there for that kid, or it's a split family and there's 4 parents there for that kid. And you've got to sit there in front of all these parents and explain what you're going to do with their children for that month. If we have tournaments come up, we're going to need money for this and for that. And here I am, I'm like a mid to late teenager doing this. So it got me on that right path of being able to speak in front of people. So if there's something that's holding you back, first you got to analyze yourself. So I would say sit down and just write a list of stuff that you want to do. And then beside it, write what is holding you back. What is making it so you can't achieve this goal? And then you just got to chip away and work on that and find out what's the best way to get through that obstacle. Find the way to go through it or around it. Find out what that is. If it's speaking in front of people, like I said, go to Toastmasters, just doing a group where do Zoom calls like this, where you can actually just talk to one person at a time, and then into 5 people and then 10 people. Get used to that before you're going in public. If it's something where it's a job where there's a certain job that you want, but you can't achieve it because you're stuck in this 9 to 5, or you have to go to college and that, find out if there's any night classes you can take. There's always something that you can do to get through that obstacle. And it's just a matter of putting it on paper and then finding out what that obstacle is, and then find a way to chip away and get through that obstacle. It's not easy, and anybody knows it's not easy, but what in life comes you easy? Very rarely is there anything comes easy, anything that's worth it anyways.
Exactly. And that's the thing, like there's so many coaches and mentors out there that you can call upon and have in your corner if you need that extra support. That's why we have people that, have gone before us and walked the path before us, and we're inspired by them. And yeah, Toastmasters is great, going to networking events, speaking to people, like whatever you're interested in, follow that. Like, don't get to, your deathbed at 105 years old, look back on your life and think, oh God, I wish I'd just done more of the things, or I had stressed less and worried less about what I was going to do, or, stayed in that job for so long that I was so unhappy. And, like we really have to take of our lives. And whether we do that on our deathbed or whether we're doing that, once we've flipped a car and then realize, hang on a second, I could have died here,
It's definitely. And it goes on anything in life. I mean, starting a family, or how many times do you hear people say, oh, we want to have children, we want to start a family, we want to wait till we're financially stable to do that. Or if you wait until if you're putting these own obstacles in front of you, you're never going to do it. I mean, we're the same way. We just got a new puppy a couple of weeks ago, who's now 3 months old. And we always said that we had no problem, but where we live, we weren't really ready to have one there. And we're at a point in our life where to take care of a dog, we weren't really able to do it. We were going to wait till maybe we moved to a new house. There was all these obstacles that we were physically or mentally ourselves putting in there. And then it finally came to a part where the opportunity arose to us that we could get this new little puppy. And my wife and daughters kind of ganged up on me, and they wanted it. And so my wife and I were doing a little trip around the area here on one weekend, and we talked about it. And I finally said, you know what, if we're going to do it, let's do it now. So we went and we got a puppy. So
what sort of puppy is
it? It's like a little sheepadoodle. So
a sheepadoodle. What is a sheepadoodle? Tell it. What's the mix?
It's the mixture of a English sheepdog and a poodle.
Oh my God, how adorable.
Now, it's not technically it's a purebred, but it's not technically it wasn't a sheepdog as the father or mother, and the poodle was the father or the mother. We actually had it breeded from 2 sheepadoodles. So there's different levels apparently. So, but yeah, they're called sheepadoodles, and it's actually, I'll have to send you a picture later, and you can see a picture of our sheepadoodle.
Please do. That's amazing. Now, John, your podcast, Butler's Babble, that's on all podcasting apps. People can tune into that. Obviously, we'll link all of that in the show notes, as well as your websites and your Instagram, so people can get in touch with you as well. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible story. I have one final question for you, and
Okay.
that is, to you, what is the meaning of life?
The meaning of life to me is just be happy
Mm,
and don't do to others what you wouldn't do to yourself.
mm,
So to me, those are two things that I live by as much as I can. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, if you do the second thing that I said, then there's no reason why you can't be happy. So,
yeah,
um, find what makes you happy, whether it's a person, place, job, anything, because life is too short and not to be happy, to be miserable, depressed, things like that. If you have all that, then you've got to make a change and
yeah,
find where you can go to make that change. But just be happy and
yeah.
just treat people with respect, the same respect that you want back, and have empathy for others too. And you'll find that you'll live a very happy life.
Beautiful. I love it. John, thank you so much for being such an incredible guest on the Enlightened podcast.
No, thank you for having me. It was a great time.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you love the Enlightened podcast, and the biggest compliment you can give me is subscribing to this podcast, sharing it, and leaving a rating and review. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @JenHamiltonOfficial, and the podcast handle is enlightened_podcast. You can also find the video version on YouTube on my channel. Just search Enlightened and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a beautiful day and enjoy living the enlightened journey of life.